One of the things that sort of has stood out for me in my involvement with different stakeholders in the health and community services sector, and specifically my colleagues in the National Disability Service and the Workforce Council, is that there's a real strong sense of this work in disability futures is ethical, and there's meaning, and that foresight in recognising that there is a need to create different futures is part of this ethic. Can you sort of talk a little bit around why foresight work is ethical and meaningful?
For me, if you're looking at many alternatives and you want to say each one is possible, the uncomfortable issue is, well, what's right? Now, I frame that into what's your preferred future? Okay. Where do you wish to go? And that's essentially the sixth pillar of futures, transforming the future. So the sixth pillar for me is, what's your ideal future? Where do you want to go?
So the ethic and the meaning of this work is really getting that alignment.
Yeah, getting clear. Where do we wish to go? Is it the right place? Do we want to go there? But it's also moving from where we are today. So the preferred future, that's the transformation part. Here's where we're going. And of course, you would want to think through the story preferred is, does your story match where you're going?
I suppose that leads me to then expanding a little bit on the last pillar, the pillar and the method associated with the pillar of transforming, visioning.
Yeah. So the way you do visioning is, one, there's personal visioning through creative visualization. That's when I ask groups to close their eyes, you go on a walk to a hedge, then you look at your preferred future.
So we can put a script up on a slide on this.
Yeah, so we can say, here's our preferred future.
Okay.
So that's one way. And then we get a message from the future that tells us, how did we do? The second visioning is really interviews where two people question each other in a very quick way to find out where do they wish to be in 2025.
That'll be what we've been doing today.
Well, it's much quicker. You straight away say, it's 2025, what are you doing?
Okay.
And you don't let them actually edit. So you want to get the quick response, and they tell
top
you,
of mind.
Top of mind, right? Because if you have them edit, then their voice of cynicism, it can't be done, comes out. You want to get through really what do they want. So the preferred future is really saying, let's not worry so much about the ground. Where do we want to go? What's our ideal future?
So it can be a little bit clunky. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. In an organization, you may have different sets of values or preferred futures. And then you start to negotiate, well, what's the core part?
So this is renegotiating the values around those futures.
Well, you may negotiate, or it could be straight away, here are 6 characteristics of a desired future.
Wow.
If you're doing this personally, you can say, okay, here's where I wish to be in 2025. The crucial part is asking yourself, where do you wish to be? And imagining it and making it feel real. You're feeling your way to the future.
So that feeling then would obviously connect with what is ethical, what is meaningful.
I think what
emotive response.
Yeah, the ethical part to me is personal. Because
Ah.
remember, we're deconstructing the notion of what's ethical. Because ethics may change in the future.
True.
So I'm hanging it on where you wish to go, not in some pre-given, here's the way the world should be.
So strategic foresight really is about renegotiating
Meanings,
and the official
purposes, directions, and you have to have good methods to do that. Otherwise, it just becomes a random conversation about the future.
So as a facilitator using these methods through the 6 pillars, is there any key messages or tips that you would have for facilitators?
Once you're doing the visioning part, and they get excited about the new future, then there's a loss of energy sometimes.
Yes.
And you have to say, okay, if you're in 2025, here's what it looks like. You do backcasting. We talked about that earlier. If 2025, here's your ideal future, now you're not doing strategic planning. You're remembering the past. What happened in 2024, 2022, 2020? So you're getting some key milestones looking at the past from the future. So that takes away the cynicism, it won't happen. Because now it's happened, you're just remembering it and using that memory to create strategy.
So 2 key methods in the pillar of transforming. Visioning, and there's 2 ways you've just suggested which you can do that. But then from visioning, we backcast, bringing the future to the present, which creates that sense of pragmatism and realism, what I can do tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, with one city council, we did the visioning, and everyone started to get excited, and then they got depressed. And I said, why? They said, well, we actually don't think we can achieve the vision. So then we did the backcasting. I said, okay, you've already achieved it. What happened differently the last 15 years? As they went through that, they realized they don't have to do everything. That gets overwhelming. So it became, what are the 3 pivotal things that need to shift? Then you focus on those 3. So once you've done that, then you might ask yourself, what's next? I mean, Steve, you work on implementation all the time. How would you answer that? What's next? What's missing? What do we do afterwards?
That's a very good question, and for me, I think futures work and strategic foresight is always about grounding it in pragmatism, and so that I can do something tomorrow in creating that preferred. That's the ethic and meaning for me, and I think that's what makes it real to people, foresight work. Well, this series has been...
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
I agree and disagree.
Okay.
I like the pragmatism, but the whole nature of foresight is to challenge pragmatism. To actually also be idealistic. Because if you're too pragmatic, I reinforce the present as it is now.
So I get to use future.
You get the use future, the disown future, default future.
So,
But if you're too idealistic, then it doesn't touch people's reality and they give up. Now, what's happening now, the world is shifting dramatically. So people can see a new future emerging. The end of hierarchical world to a flat world, but then they see a flat world, but we still have the old hierarchies. So we're living in a world of tension right now. Different futures, different possibilities, and those tensions are what make day-to-day life difficult for organizations and persons. Future says, let's get clear on the vision, let's look at the tensions, and find ways to actually resolve those tensions.
so finding ways is then what you're saying, and with implementation is the action learning experiments.
Yeah, I mean if action learning is out of say the vision, or you do the backcast. Here's 3 things we need to do. Let's experiment. Do a prototype. Let's try it. Then you come back later and think, okay, we tried this questioning process. We did the scenario process. We did the visioning process. What's our big takeaway?
You mean as in learning?
Yeah. And how do we do it again? If it's just a workshop, there needs to be something real that happens afterwards that gets fed back in. And then for me, that goes from an organization as a structure function to an organization as a learning ecology.
I think one of the other criticisms I want to address here is that sometimes foresight work has been labelled as more than just one-off events, and that actually should be a sequence of a learning that we come back and revisit and adapt through those learnings and insights.
I mean, it's creating the adaptable learning, futures-oriented organization or person. It doesn't stop. But that doesn't mean it should be overwhelming. There are day-to-day things we have to do. So it could mean just once a year everyone meets to look at emerging issues.
So that learning is really about how we adapt to be able to navigate those tensions and reduce the lag between the preferred and current realities.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. Strategic foresight is reducing the lag between the preferred future and today's reality.